Hello, everyone. This is Laura Ono here, and very excited to talk with you today as part of the Product School webinars. We're going to talk today about building AI-first products. And if your company is developing its AI strategy and you are the PM to just build one of these AI-first initiatives, this talk is for you. You may know quite a bit about data science already, and you're just starting your work as product manager in the AI space. Or maybe you're just a little bit like me. You wrote code as a developer, and now you're looking for an actual, actionable, and practical guide so that you can have real-world learnings to get you started. And so my goal of this webinar is to give you a simple framework of how to move from concept to production with your AI-first product. And before we get started, let me tell you a little bit about myself and do quick intros. I am a product manager in Expedia Group, and I'm working in the data science and algorithms team as part of the marketing organization. And so in my day-to-day, I'm helping the business understand customers, reach out to the right channels, and present those customers with the best travel options. I know travel has been a roller coaster ride this year, and I will show you some beautiful images to inspire, and maybe you're really missing that trip. So I'll make sure I take you on a virtual one. Before my work here at the Expedia Group, I worked with LivePerson on the conversational cloud, and that gave me an opportunity to understand the space of natural language understanding, natural language processing. And before that, I worked on the recommendation engines with Azure Marketplace. Again, learned a bunch of ML techniques, transfer learning, and more. And so there should be plenty of stories in here so that you can get a little bit of help on your AI journey. So let's get started. First, I want to kind of orient you on what we'll cover today. I want to put the focus point on how an AI-first strategy would change the teams and the organization that you're part of. And then I want to talk about how would you want to ideate an AI-first product. I want to talk about how would you help your team in the journey of doing architecture and improving robustness and so on. So it'll be like the second half of our presentation today. And last but not the least, the excitement starts with running a first simulation out there offline and then taking it to the A/B testing in the real life and get that feedback loop to improve. And that's what I'll cover at the end of the talk. So let's get started. First of all, I want to make it clear, what does it mean you are going to be working on an AI first product? Well, there's 3 signs that your business would show it really needs it. Your business probably reached the glass ceiling. What do I mean by that is that you have some sort of simple business rule, decision trees, and that knowledge base is so big that one human expertise cannot scale, a team cannot scale. Changing one rule, it's a jeopardy, a big danger to your business. And so you need something much better to step in. And that is when an AI first urgent fix is needed. The sign number 2 is that you have a lot of data, is large, and it has great granularity. It is not aggregated. And it should capture not just sort of the surface top of the funnel, but your business processes, the individual interactions from start to end in depth. I'll give you an example. Let's say you want to create a recommendation engine that has personalized ranking and so on. Well, first question is, there's a bunch of questions you want to hear, a yes answer to. Do you have the data available? Is like in some sort of like really deep down buried space that you cannot query? And then, is it aggregated at all? Do you have full impression data, right? Do you have access to it? Does it go far back enough, or are you just keeping the last 2 weeks, right? Can you use this data in the right way, or you need to build some sort of pipeline? Do you have ethics practices in place for that? If you answer yes to these questions, or at least most of them, then you're ready to start your work and do address them along. The third sign is that your product integrates into a larger AI strategy. So you have a data engineering team that will help you optimize, right, your data needs. You have a machine learning team that will help you with production frameworks, will help you with your robustness, CI/CD pipelines and everything. And you have domain experts that pertains to your business problem. For example, if you're doing natural language understanding, you have a team of linguists. If you're doing chatbot automation, you have a conversation designer and so on. For example, if you work in a large organization like Expedia Group, you probably have all these teams in place, and all you have to do is start that collaboration and take your teams on that journey together. Or you may be working with a startup and maybe you have a team of 2, and you can still do an AI first product. You just need to ask these questions early. How am I going to bring all this expertise? Am I consulting? Am I building partnerships and so on? And now that you have the 3 pillars in place, the challenge, the data, and the talent, I think it's time to talk about, to go talk with your customers. So we always start with them, right? Why do you talk to customers, right? You already know what you want to do. You want to do image recognition. You need to do something that's straightforward and core. It is because you need to understand what kind of data really matters to your customers. There's 2 types of really use cases here. For example, you may just be doing a consumer facing solution, like a ranking, sorting type of personalization in that space. And so that's where you pause and you say, well, I'm building this model. Could I think model as a service? Could I be actually consuming this in a secondary product? For example, the recommendation engine, right? Couldn't that go into your Salesforce solution where you do proactive reach out? Think about that. Maybe you expose the confidence score, and that's kind of a threshold, right? So that you would decide where to reach out and when not to reach out. And you would do an A/B test and find the right threshold, and voila, you've got now powering 2 products with like 1 model. And when it comes to B2B products or even like internal products in your team, so that is a much bigger opportunity to engage, right, even closer. For example, let's imagine your company builds customer care solutions, and your product needs to enable classification of conversations, right? Well, that's something that a customer representative or some business analyst in that group would do. And that's when you pause and you ask yourself, well, my customers are smarter than me, right? When it comes to solving their business problems. So how are they doing this today? And here's 2 things you can do actually to kind of solve with them that problem. So step 1, you want to shadow your customer for just a few hours. That will actually give you insight beyond what they say of how do they get the job done. Do they use regular expressions? Do they have a huge Excel spreadsheet? Like, what are the smarts that they have and how good are those? And then try to do it yourself and see what is the real pain point. For example, can you even maintain the quality for more than a few hours? And as a bonus, you'll learn exactly what data matters. You'll learn exactly what type of conversations are really important, and you have to get right and classify, as opposed to other ones, which maybe they're just the long tail. All right, so you talk with your customers. Now, I want to kind of just give you a chance to engage on the chat over here, and just tell me, you know, what do you think? There's like 3 questions I think you usually want to answer. So first one is, how much should my customers know about the AI? You'll see some people, they would just go with their largest team and start talking about RNN and KNN and like all these things and confuse the customer or create anxiety, right? So you need to think about, you know, are you talking about the how or the what or the why, and when do you bring up all these topics and for what purpose? And then the second thing that I hear a lot as a question is, well, should I bring my science team into these customer sessions? I'm not sure if the conversations are going to get too technical at some point. I think the answer here, like, chime in. I want to hear your thoughts, but I would say there's never a too early stage. If time allows it, if the team has the bandwidth, right? Building that relationship with a customer, building that trust, and just understanding their pain points as a team it is great. Actually, you should promote all your team members to the PM role when it comes to talking to customers. I think that's really valuable. And the third question, right, something that you'll hear about is, well, how much should my team really know about the business use case? As much as they can, right? They hear out from the customers, they come to those meetings, they attend them, and then they ask their questions directly. You create that communication channel, and that will definitely create that rapport and that support along when, yes, there's a day where your predictions are not as robust, and then you work together to solve it out and sort it out. So you've made all this awesome work with the team, engage them with the customer. And I think now is time that you want to start framing your problem and start thinking about how you're going to write your press release. So let's get oriented on that. Here's where you kind of have this dangerous moment where you say, well, yes, I can make such a powerful solution with these models and whatnot, and I'll boil the ocean and change the world. And yes, you can do that, but you have to do that later. Trust me on this one. We think like AI is magic. It's a magic wand, and it will like get rid of all these like awful, right, knowledge bases, rules, craziness that's unmaintainable, and it can all go away. And that's true. But can you just solve one problem all the way to the bottom, one type of conversation, one type of image, and deliver immediate value? It is called the golden recognition, the golden intent, the golden so on. And you know, if that's what matters the most to your customer, that one thing, then just go through this exercise with your team, and that will teach them where is the quality bar for winning against the current solution or substitute. I mean, that's pretty useful. And you may be really surprised how easy it is to just, you know, get everybody excited and have this quick win, because sometimes training can take like a lot of time and with the team, and you want to kind of do a good big step forward, have a good morale from the start. And you may not need that 99% accuracy that you're fighting towards. You can double the efficiency of your business just by nailing down the one thing that, or two, that would really be needed. And on this point, I can't stress enough about talking about specific business requirements. So you may ask your questions, how accurate do you want my image recognition to be? Oh, you know, 99%. And that would be like a blanket statement. They will never say, I want it to be 90%, right? But when you go specific, right, and when you go to a particular prediction, then you will understand exactly what works and what doesn't work. And I want to break this down further. And here's a way you can define the type of problem you're solving and the metrics you will work with. There's kind of like two problems you want to usually have to solve off the bat. So it's understanding new data. It's understanding existing data, right? So if it's existing data, then you're looking most of the time at a classification problem, and you would be talking about data labeling and crowdsourcing that for accuracy, and what's your coverage, and what is your recall, and what is your precision. That's all great. And so at some point you'll be like, I can't classify everything. So for the tail, I'll apply auto clustering, which is another kind of frequent sort of understand the data problem. And with that, right, you would want to kind of visualize those clusters in a sort of easy, intuitive way. And so you'll reduce dimensionality, right? That's another space. They usually go together in like a product or a suite of products. And that's all exciting. What's going to happen is that you're going to work with domain experts. You will create ontologies, you'll create taxonomies, and you want those people to be with you talking to the customer. And so that's why you need to have the early expertise early on. The second type of problems, all right, is, well, I need to create new data. That data doesn't exist, right? And for example, as opposed to classifying images, which you can always ask a human, hey, you know, this picture here, trying to do real estate images, does it have a fireplace? Yes, no, and they'll be like, yeah, it does or it doesn't. In this one, maybe it's just an image that has too dark or too lighted areas. And what you have to do then is just fill it in. Ask 10 humans, they will do it differently. Nobody knows what is really in there, right? And at times, if you're doing like a process, controlling a process or an auction and so on, then you can't even go back in the past and simulate a what if scenario, because there's no one to click that button again or choose that recommendation, right? So nothing can really help you get to the bottom of it. And you will likely formulate then this as an optimization problem. And yes, this, you can't go back in time, that's a problem. But another one is that you merely even know the error of your prediction, right? Because right, the data signals, you only consume that many, there's other ones that you don't know of. So you're talking about noise levels and so on. And what it can really help in this space is training your team early on to think about hypothesis-based experimentation, and you will get moving. So I would say at this point, when you took this journey with your team, they should be already super inspired, super ready to move along and start ideation. So your press release should be taking shape by now. So let's see what's the next step then. You want to think big, you want to think small, and you want to keep it feasible. Now, that sounds impossible, right? Well, though it is in the ideation phase when you start to talk about risks and feasibilities. And there's 3 ways you can actually de-risk your plan that are pretty simple and straightforward. First one is you want to give generous time to ideation. Don't rush your scientists. They have amazing passion and an incredible amount of ideas. They also have the energy to evaluate them. So they would continuously, you know, sort of like be in the state of like whiteboarding. And that's really amazing. And then get your engineers along, get your analysts along. They will actually contribute and learn a great deal about how AI can help their use cases. And then, okay, you have a bunch of ideas, right? Do you have to pick one? No. I personally have never seen a project where just one idea is picked up. Usually it's the role of portfolios. And that's when the think big and small kicks in, right? Because you kind of want to put as a product manager this framework where you say, well, this idea, what are its qualities? Well, it's fast to implement and it's making a bunch of assumptions. And then these are the risks, right? It's going to pretty much not solve fully the problem, or its accuracy is going to hit a wall at some point, right? So make that list, organize the conversation. You will have some of the ideas which would be sort of traditional or established. So the industry has solved this in this way. If we do it this way, we expect a robust kind of well-established results. And that's great. And then you want to kind of call out here that you're still doing scoping and you're still doing limitations, and have an ROI discussion of this option versus the other pre-established option. And try to have at least one idea that is basically in the well-established direction. But sometimes you want to be better than best, right? Maybe your business is making that bet to get ahead. So you gotta start thinking big. You want to think about R&D. And well, the challenge here, right, is that well, are we going to do external collaborations? Who are we going to talk to? What are our innovation paths, right? You want to kind of allocate at least 20% of your time to think big. More is great. But, you know, let me just give you some quotes of what you may hear from your science team. That will also help you sort of organize the conversation and ideate with them. First one. Data never looks the way you thought it would. Just look at it. I can't just speak more to this. Yes, your data may be too sparse. You may have expectations of it from a sample that you took from your customer or from those live sessions you have with them. But when you look in the fullness of the data, it may look different. So you gotta look at it. You'll learn something. Second one, why would I spend time to perform well in simulation? My model is designed to compete in the real world. Yeah, your simulation may be off with reality because you can spend 6 months incubating and simulating. They have a good point here. So you need to strategize around taking it early into testing. And then another one that you'll hear a lot as you ask, like, are we ready to launch a test or so? It'll be like, well, a model can look like a random number generator in the early stages. So the performance numbers, can't really reflect my progress. That's true. That's true. If you're gonna be building some sort of like health curve or trend where you expect your model to improve, I don't know, weekly with that much on accuracy, I would say that that's just too much tracking, and it's not product management. So I would not go in that space as much as you like to. And the last one, right? It's maybe my favorite. It says, well, researchers are very good at figuring out what to do when nothing seems to work. So that happens a lot when you have one of these solutions in the portfolio, right? And it's kind of time to evaluate it, and you just kind of want to stay objective and use your evaluation criteria. You have to have a serious evaluation criteria for all these multiple, right, places, veins, solutions that you started to develop. And if that evaluation that you've created, it's not valid anymore, okay, rethink that and reevaluate all the other investments, right? You are the CEO of your product, and you want to invest wisely the team's energy, and you want to be fair. So think about it that way. All right. And so now that we talked about how to ideate, it's time for us to ask some questions as we step into the space of starting sort of like a large investment, a good implementation, and so on. So frequent question here is, well, should I start building multiple models, multiple instances based on some segmentation rule, like for example, geolocation or countries and so on? Or maybe should I just start with a global one and like think big, hit big? Chime in on the channel here because, right, I've seen it both, and they're both possible. But in my experience, if you just try to narrow down the problem to maybe, let's say we're talking about location, maybe one country or geolocation that, it's really burning the business and you can have the maximum impact there, I would spend the energy in that space instead of just trying to address overall consistent, right, accuracy, get that sparse data everywhere like that. It tends to be a larger project, and it can be really, really hard to maintain getting time and energy from the team. So think about it that way. Second question, when should I think about scaling this solution in production? From day one. And because it's gonna inform a lot of the requirements around frameworks that you want to use and so on. So do start that early. You don't want to rewrite, you don't want to migrate, you don't want to waste time in these kind of in these kind of investments. And third one is, well, how about integration into UX and other products? Again, those are your stakeholders. They should come and talk to, at the table, put their sort of needs when it comes to performance and so on. And don't postpone that conversation. It's not going to actually help you bring your A/B test to live sooner, but rather later. All right, so we've talked about that. I want to kind of move along and talk about launching your A/B test. This is where it gets really, really, really exciting. So how is an A/B testing for an AI first product any different from just a simple test launch, like a testing the size of a button, a small content change, and so on? Well, the difference is that you're going to do a lot more preparation before launching. So let's say you want to add a new audience segmentation rule for your campaigns. Let's say that you're doing AI marketing, and you'll use this model to predict when to display an ad and when to not display it. To launch this test successfully, right, you need to agree with the team where you launch the campaign, what are all the segments and configuration, and then there's a big question: should I try and kind of test where I think I'll have the most success for a typical mix, or maybe just go for the worst case scenario? And what are we going to learn from all those three ways to think about it? And then there's another thing, which is that, well, my test needs to kind of deal with real world factors like other campaigns, competitor moves. Well, can we even detect that? So yeah, that's a fair point. Such changes may actually bias the results of your A/B test, and you may be able to see that if you did a good homework to evaluate it. And so what you want to do is perhaps rebin. And then you will then re-agree of what is the right criteria. So yes, people hope for a one A/B test with win and lose, but in reality, this is an iterative process. You will talk a lot about confidence intervals, and you will probably circulate this a lot with all kinds of internal stakeholders, your B2B partners, and so on. And so bring your statistics A game. And yeah, there's one point I made here, which I'm really excited about. You want to accelerate testing. You don't want to wait. It's totally fine to either, launch multiple A/B tests in parallel, or if you have a lot of flavors, a lot of sort of parameter tuning that you want to test out, three-way tests are possible too. Just again, get your binning and statistics in check. Okay, cool. So now that we've talked about launching the A/B test, right, and it's going to produce results, you're going to want to expand. You will want to actually think about productizing it. You want to do that, right, while simplifying. So what happens a lot is that, for example, if you may have a process to label data that has a lot of manual steps. And so you wouldn't scale to produce 10x more labeling data at the same quality. Or it may be that you're controlling some sort of process, some sort of regression. And so that requires a little bit of science work, data analytics to configure its starting point. Again, maybe that's not going to scale. How can you automate that, or how can you simplify that? That is really important so you can productize. And let's get specific with this. There's two use cases, right? Your model can be consumed online, which means it's like some sort of service, and it's being queried on demand, right? It's like a function. It's just getting on, and it needs to answer fast, right? And it can be overwhelmed with a bunch of requests at the same time. There's a spike in booking cancellations. A bunch of people want to go on chat, and then you're like entity recognition or intent recognition or conversation automation, everything, right? Well, query your conversation understanding models, and they have to scale to put up with the demand, keep that consistent SLA. So that's your challenge. You have to understand that early, and this could be actually a criteria to triage some of those early ideations. Which ones are, nice and accurate, but they would never be possible to put into a framework that meets the SLAs that you need, right? And then there's the other case, right, where and it's, don't worry if your first test it's like 10x slower than what you want it to be, because the frameworks that you could use, if you put the time and energy, could really be amazing. That's a subject for another talk, but I would just say don't get scared if your first SLA it's a bit off. And then there's offline predictions. They're actually used more often than you'd think. So here you just have like a scheduled job, and it's like a bit safer, right? You generate those predictions in, like, let's say every couple of hours maybe, or daily, or some schedule like that. For example, maybe you have real estate marketplace, and so various suppliers, they would submit a listing and they would attach a bunch of images, and then there's a scheduler, right, that runs, picks up those and tags your images to say, well, this one has fireplace, this has a nice patio, this one has large garden, whatever it is. it seems much easier, but it's not, because you also have to understand your operations plan. For example, you want to ask yourself, well, you know, do we rerun everything if our model has an accuracy boost? Do we kind of run all the already in production classified images? How often do we even try to measure the performance of this, and how do we do it? These are all good questions, and I would say it's kind of a test and learn, right? How often do you expand or contract? How do you do that? What is the timing of that? These are specific, typical engineering problems, and you want to think about them early. Right, so in both cases, though, there's some common things that you want to do. In both cases, you want to build your CI/CD pipeline along with prototyping, and don't throw away, you know, work in migrate. Aim to not do that as much as possible. And so, you know, this is kind of your constant question that you ask the team. It's like, can we simplify this? This looks like a very convoluted 10 steps. Many things can go wrong. How much accuracy are we going to really lose if we eliminate this extra step, right, of creating a second layer of auto labels and so on? So do ask that questions, and then don't worry if it's not perfect yet. You would rather want to add than have to deal with the fact that you've built it in and now you have to remove. So we talked about how to simplify and how to productize, and how to kind of think about production. I want to kind of pass it over to you at this point. And imagine you're embarking at this airplane with like 100 buttons, because you got to tune your model, you know, optimize the data signals you're using. You want to have the most awesome CI/CD pipeline. You want to think about robustness of your predictions. Are they sometimes very good, sometimes very bad, sometimes inconsistent in certain segments? And so you also have to have that cadence for how and when do I do a deep evaluation, think about bias, think about diagnostics. And this is where your engineering background should go 100%. Be confident and use that. You may hear a bunch of statements that will call attention to you as a product manager. There's just 5 that I've selected just to kind of get you oriented. So why don't you just chime me here on the chat and tell me, try to guess which ones are myth and which ones are fact. I'm gonna read them through, and then I'm just gonna kind of comment on them. So first one, there's too many ways you can architect and tune a model. Therefore, it's more than an art than a science. I'll just tell you my opinion on that. I actually think this is fact. Don't even try to do it all, right? Try to have like a, I guess, you know, comprehensive way of trying all types of models and be systematic, because you'll run out of time, and there's a lot of competition, right? When it comes to AI, you will just fall behind. Do rely on the expertise of your data scientist, or do rely on your, you know, background of white papers and publications and so on. Don't waste the time trying it all. Second question, you can't tell a model what data to use because it has a mind of its own, and it will probably better if you just remove all the features which you see they have like weak weights and so on, and that's gonna simplify. So for this one, I would say it is partially true. Here's why. Think about the COVID-19 story, right? Maybe some signals which they were traditionally weak and did not matter, now they started to actually pick up and improve the accuracy. But guess what? Last year you thought they're not relevant, so you removed them. So now you're missing out, and you need to bring them back. And that is right. That is creating a little bit of a lag in your ability to predict and right that day where, the problem came. So, try to kind of balance that decision and think strategically. Rely on your business analysts, get them on the table to decide, how and which signals to optimize and keep versus remove. Okay, let's move to the third one. This is my favorite one. Models are non-deterministic, and hence you can't control or improve their robustness. Really, totally a myth. Not true. You can, and there's, I guess, literature and books about it. And if you have people good with math, statistics, do rely on them. They will help you out. And also just, bring expertise or try to think of ways you could sample the data and how would you then compare and detect bias. Fourth one, that's another one that you'll see a lot in, like, I don't know, the press, the news. Predictions are not explainable. AI is not explainable. And so you cannot debug a model. There is some truth into it. Like, you can't debug it the way you debug like Java code, right? You cannot step in that way. And yes, the way it's like a lot of work, but there are tools out there that you could try. And there are partial explanations you can actually give. And there's various techniques that you can do that. But yes, just chime in and disagree and just tell me your story about it. And last but not the least, the data science artifacts cannot be versioned. And so you can have a proper CI/CD pipeline. Totally not true. I would definitely debunk this one. Don't trust that. Keep on working with the data engineers, your machine learning engineers, your engineering team, and make it happen. You do need a proper CI/CD pipeline. You cannot talk production without it. All right, so it's time to wrap it up. I want you to take just 3 takeaways. First one is maximize ideation and minimize incubation. This is overrated. Don't take 6 months to try and just create something that you don't know where it's going. Take it out there and think of creative ways you can actually have your model meet the real world. Second one, I would always favor an A/B test over any kind of accuracy in simulation. So don't stress about like, my accuracy in simulation doesn't look good enough, so what's the point of an A/B test? Well, you may learn a bunch of things in the real world, which your simulation cannot because it doesn't have those conditions. And so you're just assuming a bunch of things. And then the third one is that you want to think about how you're going to productize from the press release. And so that means you bring the right expertise and they understand the problem you're solving for. And they will tell you which scalable frameworks to bring in and use right away. So if I am to capture in just one nutshell, if you want to build successful AI first products, you just need to think how to simplify. That's my favorite quote here from my favorite author, by the way. Perfection is achieved not when there is nothing more to add, but when there's nothing left to take away. With science, we always want to make it as comprehensive and well thought as possible. And sometimes we just throw a bunch of things in there, which actually you may be just fine without them. Share with me any of these stories. I'm more than excited to kind of learn about them. And one last thing, let's talk more about AI first. There's a bunch of internals that we can open. Maybe I'll post something on LinkedIn. So do engage with me there. I'm on Twitter as well. I want to do like A/B testing, survival guide, monitoring the right KPIs for the right types of models, right? And the one that I care the most, model diagnostics. All right, so till next time, thank you for engaging here. I will pick up some of the questions that I could not answer and just type it in. And talk soon, keep in touch.